What is too far? Too far is it gets you arrested in New Haven, Connecticut by Captain Kelly.
Have you ever wondered how a single band could completely reshape the sound of an entire decade and still remain shrouded in mystery more than 50 years later? What if I told you their frontman once got arrested mid-performance? Their music was banned from the radio, and yet they still managed to sell over 100 million albums worldwide? This is the story of The Doors, a band that turned poetry into rebellion, chaos into anthems, and forever changed the course of rock music. But before they were legends, before the controversy, before the world knew the name Jim Morrison, it all began with a chance encounter on the sunlit sands of Venice Beach in Los Angeles. The spark on Venice Beach. It was July 1965. Two former film students from UCLA, Jim Morrison and Ray Manzarek, recognized each other on the beach. They hadn't seen each other since school, but something about that moment felt different. Manzarek, already experimenting with music through his surf rock group Rick and the Ravens, asked Morrison what he had been working on. Morrison hesitated, then quietly admitted he had been writing songs. Curious, Manzarek asked him to sing one. And right there on the beach, Morrison recited the haunting opening of Moonlight Drive. Let's swim to the moon.
Let's swim to the moon.
Let's climb through the tide.
Let's climb through the tide.
Penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide.
Evening that the city sleeps to hide.
Manzarek was floored. These weren't just lyrics. This was poetry. Dark, vivid, cinematic poetry. He knew instantly he had found a voice unlike any other. That was the moment the Doors were born. But make no mistake, Morrison never set out to be a rock star. He didn't even want to sing. Yet fate had other plans. From frat parties to the unknown. At first, Morrison joined Manzarek's group reluctantly. Rick and the Ravens were playing frat houses, stuck in the surf rock sound dominating California at the time. But, with Morrison's words, the tone shifted. In September 1965, they recorded a 6-song demo at World Pacific Studios. Rick and Jim Manzarek tried shopping it around, but the industry wasn't interested. The demo flopped. Discouraged, Rick and Jim left the band, dismissing it as going nowhere fast. But history has a cruel sense of irony, because just as they walked away, the true Doors lineup began to form. The Doors of Perception. Soon after, guitarist Robby Krieger joined, bringing a flamenco-influenced style that set them apart. With John Densmore on drums, the 4-piece lineup was complete. They needed a new name, something bold, something that captured the sense of breaking through barriers. Inspired by Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, itself inspired by William Blake's line, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." They christened themselves simply The Doors. It was a name that promised more than music. It promised a journey into uncharted territory. Learning the craft. London Fog to Whiskey a Go-Go. At first, audiences didn't quite get it. Their earliest gigs were nearly empty. But from February to May 1966, the band landed a residency at a small club called London Fog. Those nights shaped them. Morrison grew bolder, his stage presence darker and more magnetic. The band's sound fused blues, jazz, rock, and psychedelia into something completely their own. Ray Manzarek later said that was when the magic began to happen. Word spread, and soon they were promoted to the iconic Whiskey a Go-Go. That's where everything changed. On August 10, 1966, Jack Holtzman, president of Elektra Records, caught a Doors show. He was stunned. Producer Paul Rothchild soon joined him for another performance. Both were convinced this was the future of rock. Elektra signed The Doors on August 18th. Ironically, just 3 days later, the Whiskey fired them after Morrison's LSD-fueled, shocking performance of The End, complete with an obscene retelling of the Oedipus myth. But by then, they had a record deal in hand. A dark debut. The band entered Sunset Sound Studios with Rothchild. Unlike other acts, they recorded mostly live, capturing the raw energy of their shows. The result was unlike anything else in popular music: brooding, moody, seductive. Released on January 4th, 1967, their self-titled debut album would become one of the most acclaimed rock albums in history. But at the time, success wasn't instant. Their first single, Break On Through, To the Other Side, struggled on radio. Then came Light My Fire. Lighting the Fire. In April 1967, Light My Fire hit the airwaves. By summer, it soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, staying there for 3 weeks. Suddenly, The Doors were everywhere. The song wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem of the counterculture. Television appearances followed, including the famous Ed Sullivan Show on September 17, 1967. Executives asked them to censor the line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher."
But faces come out of the rain.
But Morrison, defiant as ever, sang it anyway. When told they'd never appear on Sullivan again, his casual reply became legend. "Hey man, we just did the Sullivan Show." That rebellious streak only deepened the myth. Strange days and stranger nights. By the time Elektra released their second album, Strange Days, on September 25, 1967, the Doors were no longer an underground curiosity. They were cultural icons. The album debuted at #3 and gave us People Are Strange and Love Me 2 times. But fame brought chaos. Morrison was unpredictable, his drinking worsening. On December 9, 1967, in New Haven, Connecticut, he was sprayed with mace by a police officer backstage. Morrison took revenge mid-concert, taunting the officer in improvised lyrics. The show ended with Morrison being arrested on stage.
What is too far? Too far is it gets you arrested in New Haven, Connecticut by Captain Kelly and
The first rock star ever dragged off mid-performance. The legend of Morrison, the outlaw, was born. The rise, the riot, the collapse. 1968 brought their third album, Waiting for the Sun.
Waiting for the sun, waiting for the sun.
While commercially strong, critics were divided. Still, songs like Hello, I Love You, and The Unknown Soldier kept them in the spotlight. But concerts were spiraling out of control. At the Singer Bowl in New York, fans rioted after the show. In Amsterdam, Morrison collapsed on stage from narcotics, forcing the band to finish without him. And then came Miami, March 1st, 1969. Morrison stumbled on stage drunk, taunting the crowd, riling them up into a frenzy. Allegations that he exposed himself sparked outrage. Though bandmates swore he hadn't, Morrison was arrested again, facing obscenity charges. Radio stations banned their music. Concerts were canceled. Millions lost. The Doors' momentum crashed, but they weren't done yet. Reinventing the sound. Determined to evolve, the band experimented with brass and strings on their fourth album, The Soft Parade, 1969. Critics dismissed it as overblown, but today, tracks like Touch Me are remembered as classics. By February 1970, they stripped things back with Morrison Hotel. A return to their roots, it showcased raw, blues-driven energy with songs like Roadhouse Blues and Peace Frog. Critics hailed it as a comeback. Still, Morrison was spiraling, drinking heavily, gaining weight, and clashing with producer Paul Rothchild. During sessions for their next album, Rothchild walked out, leaving engineer Bruce Botnick to take over. What followed was their last masterpiece with Morrison, The Storm Before the End. Released April 19, 1971, L.A. Woman was a triumph. Dark, gritty, and drenched in blues, it gave us Love Her Madly, Riders on the Storm, and the title track. It was raw, powerful, and strangely prophetic. But Morrison was done with the rock circus. He moved to Paris with Pamela Corson, seeking peace and a literary life. On July 3, 1971, just 3 months after L.A. Woman's release, Morrison was found dead in a bathtub. He was only 27. No autopsy was performed. Officially, it was heart failure. Unofficially, many suspected a heroin overdose. Like Hendrix and Joplin before him, Morrison had joined the infamous 27 Club. After the fall. The Doors carried on as a trio, releasing Other Voices, 1971, and Full Circle, 1972. But without Morrison, the magic was gone. Sales dwindled, and by 1973, the band disbanded. Yet the story wasn't over. In 1978, they reunited to release An American Prayer, pairing Morrison's recorded poetry with new music. A haunting, fitting farewell. Over the decades, their influence only grew. A surge of interest in the 1990s, fueled by Oliver Stone's film, cemented them as legends for new generations. Today, the Doors are credited with shaping not just psychedelic rock, but also paving the way for progressive and gothic rock. They remain symbols of rebellion, artistry, and danger, eternal outlaws of rock and roll. The legacy of the Doors. What made the Doors so different? It wasn't just Morrison's charisma, or Manzarek's hypnotic keyboards, or Krieger's flamenco-inspired guitar, or Densmore's jazz-infused drumming. It was the alchemy between them, the collision of poetry, philosophy, and raw power. They weren't afraid to be dark when the world demanded light. They weren't afraid to challenge authority, to fuse art with chaos, to create music that felt like a seance. Even today, their songs feel alive, dangerous, seductive, mysterious. And maybe that's why the Doors endure, not just as a band, but as an idea. A reminder that music isn't just entertainment, it's a doorway into something infinite. So, let me ask you, if you had to choose one song to define the Doors, Light My Fire, Riders on the Storm, The End, or maybe something else, what would it be? Because in
the end, the Doors weren't just a band. They were an invitation to break on through to the other side.